Hello, everybody. We are back here on Gelvin Valley this evening. Oh, goodness, this is probably the 29th episode, I believe. Hopefully, I got that number right. I can't believe how many episodes it's amounted to. I guess there's a lot more time that goes by in game than a person ever realizes as you try to do all the things that you do on a working farm. And what we're doing at the moment is making some round bales. So we're going to keep on working at that, take care of our fields, and I think I've mentioned before, I'm not super wild about the round baler in game, maybe because I'm just lazy and I would prefer to drive and just let the bales kind of pooch out the back like they do in real life. But alas, we gotta kind of take our time and individually turn all these bales loose to the wild. Last episode, I think I even showed a little bit of modding type stuff, kind of a script that I'm using to help keep these bales affixed to the hill, if you will, because for the longest time they were trying to get out of the fields by any means possible, namely downhill and hopping all over the place. That just didn't seem quite realistic. Just once again struck by the beauty of this map. Look at that. There's a trail that kind of heads up from here through the woods to another field, just like you might have in real life. Uh, Paths between fields, paths off again to Wild Wild West for beautiful map that he created that I've been thoroughly enjoying getting back into. You know, look just a little ahead. This is another fence where the combine has tried to stick its nose through it, by the way. Anybody that's watched all these episodes knows all the trouble I've had with that. But over to the left here, it's labeled in blue on the map, which implies water. But obviously there isn't any water in there. It appears he's got the appearance of some marsh. I think we previously learned that that's kind of some wheat texture or whatever in there. Um, but you wonder how hard it would be to make a mod to have some water periodically show up in there. Maybe nothing like that down there. I guess I don't know that much about, in the map description, he says it's based on, I believe, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and what was it? One other place? Was it Northern Ireland? Maybe part of the UK. Kind of a British, Irish, Scottish map, I think he calls it. So I think they get a lot of rainfall there. Maybe anybody listening that's across the pond can inform me on all that. But I know here, like in the US, in the West, you will see areas like that. And of course, we now can't see it. We see the stream down there, but they call it a dry wash. And it's an area where if there's really heavy rains encountered at higher elevations, I mean, all that water needs to go somewhere. So a lot of times it'll come down through these channels called a dry wash. And you can really get yourself in trouble if you're hiking through areas like that and all of a sudden you may not even know that there's a rainstorm going on up high, and then all of a sudden, like if you camped in one of these things, wake up and find yourself literally in a bunch of water because it's all, coming down, and it's some of the nastiest looking stuff you can imagine. Because a lot of times the dry washes, I mean, they will have, like you can kind of see, here's another one to the left of us here. You'll see rock, but there's a lot of dirt, there's trees, there's all kinds of foliage, garbage, you name it. And when the water comes down, it's indiscriminate. It peels all that down with it. So if you get caught in it, you're kind of in a bad way. because a lot of times there's a lot of hard objects coming with the water to they're quite dangerous to you. But I am kind of curious, do you have something similar in the UK where, it's just another pathway for water to go that isn't, water doesn't go down very often, but it occasionally can. And maybe he would have put water in here if, there would have been something to do it. Part of me wonders how hard it would be to, I'm kind of getting the germ of an idea for a mod. I just don't know if I have enough energy to do it. He's got all these ditches. I could probably figure out a way to put the texture that we have down here. We'll go downhill because I kind of dream about this towards the river. See that there? Okay, it just appeared. That moving water down there. I bet, see, that's all sitting kind of flat or flattish, if you will, and obviously simulates moving water. I bet that could be put up in here, the area just to the left, and maybe when it's raining, you could turn it on so that it's visible, and so you would see that when it rains, there's water that comes down these washes, and then as soon as it quits raining, maybe you quit seeing the water come down. Probably wouldn't even be that hard to do. The hardest part would probably be laying all the texture in the map so that it's there to be turned on or off. I don't think it'd be that hard at all to write a script to do that. Oh, the silly things you think, at least I think, when you play a map like this and just dream a little bit as to additional things you could do with it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a map in its own right. It's obviously Wild Wild West did a stellar job on it. Just wish it came to later versions. Tonight I gotta say my back is a little sore, and it might be from the work we did. It was like yesterday when we spread bark dust. Yeah, maybe getting older and less flexible than I was when I was younger, but tonight we were outside again, and my wife and I planted our garden, and truthfully it seems pretty late, but it's just been so rainy. And when we were out there in the soil, a lot of it was still pretty clodded up, and it was very moist still, but we have more rain on the way, so we kind of felt compelled that we had to get it in the ground and get it going. Usually, as a family, we've tried to put it in on Memorial Day, right at the tail end of May. Well, this year, for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. I think it was probably pouring down rain, so we just didn't get it done, but tonight we finally did. Last night we had it rototilled one more time. I think I mentioned maybe in the previous video there was a neighbor fella who generously let us borrow his tractor. I say borrow, he's the one that drove it. I mean, he gave himself to it also. Helped us spread all over bark dust, and it's just the perfect size to use to till up your garden. And we tend to borrow a hand rototiller. It belongs to my father that he's had for eons. I think he even had it when I was a kid. And it works. We'll probably use it at some point this summer. But it can really give you a beating in the arms to take it strip by strip over it. And so it's just so handy when a neighbor has a little tractor, it isn't huge, and is able to till it up for us. Much, much appreciated. I just wish the soil could have been a little, and like I say, I think I've said before, I'm not a farmer. I haven't worked on farms, I've been around farms, but that doesn't mean I know my dirt or that I have a green thumb or anything like that. I'm like everybody else. I know enough to how to plant a seed and how to grow stuff, but in terms of being a professional, far, far from it. So So the dirt in the garden, I mean, it's kind of gumbo-like. It's sticky a bit. It's clods, larger clods, and it's done this in the past, and it'll unfortunately it dries that way, and so then you're left with a bunch of big clods. Where what I'd like it to do is kind of just crumble up and become fine dirt. We were out there planting tonight, and fortunately it's moist, so that helps. So when you have all these larger clods, and when I say larger clods, I'm talking like the size of your fist. You just don't think of planting something in dirt with clods the size of your fist, or at least I don't. I tend to think of drier dirt that's kind of crumbly, where the particles of the dirt are no bigger than, say, the tip of your pinky, just a little bit there, and then most of it is actually smaller, yet still it's fine. But yeah, it just isn't that way. Maybe on account of all the rain that we've had. And we've had trouble with this in the past, and part of it was because of how we handle the leaves in the fall. Our house, our garden is kind of on the north end of the property, so there's a number of trees around here that drop leaves in the fall. And when they would do that, we'd leaf blow them kind of to the north, and we'd put them over the top of our garden. And then they would kind of sit there, and I thought it was great. And add a little particulate matter to the garden, organic matter, if you will. It was a place to take the leaves to, and it also helped prevent weeds. I mean, it kind of was a composting effect. You put a big old layer of leaves on there, well, there was nothing that was going to grow underneath that over winter into spring. The trouble is oftentimes those leaves wouldn't disintegrate in time for planting the garden. So, we'd have a bunch of extra tillage to get rid of all those leaves, and they didn't incorporate the best into the soil. And a lot of times, I mean, kind of looking at the layers, and maybe we're still fighting it for all I know. But a lot of times, it just didn't incorporate very well, and you'd still see the layers in there, and it would stick together. So maybe we're still paying a price for some of the past practices there, and maybe there's even a way we could get it to break down quicker. I just wish we had, well, I guess what I would call normal dirt. But I don't even know. Who knows what normal is? As I sit here grousing about our dirt, someone else would probably be very thankful to have it, and that would be that. Never know what you have until you lose it. Our home, where it is here, kind of sits between two distinct types of soil. Um, if anybody's seen my Lone Oak videos, they know I've commented sometimes on the red dirt. It's a type of clay type dirt that just has rocks all over in it. Well, our backyard is high enough elevation. That's the red clay dirt. The front yard, I'm not going to say it's any lower elevation. It isn't much, but it switches right on our house line from the hills dirt to the valley dirt. Whoops, looks like I cranked it out of bale right here. Okay, try to put it out of the way. So, interestingly, in our backyard, if you try to dig a hole, it's possible you come up with rocks and all this red dirt. In the front yard, you probably wouldn't hit a rock. Not true in all cases, but probably most of them. I know the dividing line's got to be somewhere. It's amazing how crisp that line can be. And maybe that makes sense. Some of this dirt, I think, is a result of volcanic action long, 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 long time ago, before the founding of the U.S. even. Who knows when it happened? I won't believe that it happened millions of years ago, but who knows when it happened. They maybe had these, oh, what do they call it? Pyroclastic, is that a word? Where, the lava and everything comes out, and I think it did something to the dirt that made it the way it is. Who knows? Suffice it to say, it ends in our backyard, and we got something different in our front yard. And over on the garden, it kind of is a blend of the two there. Um, really don't have a lot of rocks. It's just a bunch of, well, gumbo. But hopefully, the trouble is it's a little chilly right now. It's cold outside. We got rain coming, but hopefully we'll get some sun on it and get those seeds popped out of the ground. Trying to mute myself when I cough. Probably shouldn't be doing all this with a head full, but I happen to have fun doing this. So, oop, oh my, can't talk and drive. Story of my life. What I do know is I'm getting way better FPS running lowly old FS15 than I get when I'm running Farm Sim 17. I don't know why that is. But on the flip side, in here I still have that silly bar across the top of the screen that, I don't have that over in FS17. There's trade-offs to everything. So we planted the garden tonight, and as is typically the case, it's always a hodgepodge of plants that were first raised kind of in a greenhouse or nursery and planting the seeds themselves. So first thing we planted was a bunch of tomato plants. I just love tomatoes. I practically eat them like candy. Can't get enough of them. So I'm really looking forward to them putting out some fruit. And there's something about the tomato plant. I just like the smell of the things. I don't know about anybody else, but I like them so much so I've contemplated getting a tomato plant even for my office in town, just so I can smell the thing all the time when I'm working in my office. Is that kind of silly or what? Maybe there's someone else out there that likes tomatoes. I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of silly that way. I haven't done it yet. I have no idea if it's capable to produce fruit. In my office in town is kind of it's a fully enclosed building. I don't even have an office on the edge of the building, so no window. I mean, I do have a window, but it's to the hallway. It isn't to the outside, so it wouldn't get sunlight. I'd have to figure out how to get it some. Well, I don't know how I would do that. What do you call that? Is that artificial light? I don't even know if it's even possible. Maybe I could actually have a plant, and maybe it would grow some of the time, but probably wouldn't ever produce fruit. That's probably just the reality of it. That reminds me of a plant I had in college, university when I went there. Um, I don't know why I had it. Uh, Mom maybe gave it to me, so I had something to kind of beautify the dorm room. It really was kind of a scrub plant. It was a tough one. It didn't really flower. It was just green leaves, but like I say, I don't really have a green thumb. I didn't treat it the best. Um, I watered it faithfully, I think, when I was in school. So when I was down doing my coursework and whatever, it was always in front of me, so I was thinking about it from time to time. I'd water it, take care of it. But when I came home for summer, my room at home was down in the basement, where my bedroom was, and it had a single window near the ceiling, and most of the time the drapes were pulled. And when I brought it home, I didn't do nothing with that plant. I think the poor thing just kind of went dormant over the summer. I don't think I watered it a single time, and it somehow survived clear to the following fall when I returned to school. So, shoot, I don't know. Maybe I know what I'm doing with plants. Maybe it subsisted on whatever water I gave it, and then just like I say, went dormant. Who knows? So maybe one day I'll try a tomato plant as an office plant. But for the moment, we have, I think, 7 of them growing out in the garden. I think some of them are Roma tomatoes, which tend to be a type of tomato I think you use in salsa, really love homemade salsa. Can't get enough of that, although it can be a bit tedious to make. Extra work. Kind of use a food processor on it anymore. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I think some are the cherry tomato type, the little ones. Those are the ones I could eat all day long, just like candy. Just love them things. So after the tomatoes, we put in some bell peppers and of different types. I think orange and green and red. But I thought I was told one time, we used to have a client that processed bell peppers, and what they told me is the bell pepper plant, at least the ones that they raise commercially, you go to the grocery store, you can find bell peppers, green, yellow, orange, red, kind of runs a whole gamut. They said it's all the same plant, or at least is what I was told. They said the difference is how long you leave it growing in the field or how much sunlight it's able to get. Now, I really don't know. We've grown bell peppers in the past. I don't remember in particular, just what they did. But so anyway, my wife is pointing these out as orange and different colors, and so I don't know if she has that right or maybe I've had it wrong this whole time. But we've got some bell peppers coming. We also got some hot peppers. I think there's a jalapeno plant, and another one, was it a serrano? Uh, so I don't know. A lot of these peppers, I mean, that tends to be more a warm season type plant. So I don't know what we'll be able to expect for output on those. It's all going to depend on what kind of summer we have, how faithful we are watering these things, and that kind of thing. But we'll see what they produce. But anything that has such a long growing season, I mean, it's kind of shortening now with all this rain we've been having. So we put in a few peppers. Let's see what else. I think that was maybe the plants that we put in. There's always too several mounds, if you will. Where you put melons or that kind of thing on there. Didn't have any melons this particular year. We have in the past. For whatever reason, my wife chose not to have any this year. So, but we did put in for a hill for pumpkins, a hill for these gourds that are kind of decorative. They look like pumpkins, little miniature pumpkins. They're not edible. And I think we may have made a mistake. We planted them too close to the squash, so I mean, there may be some cross-pollination that happens. Oh well, it's happened before. I guess we'll deal with it if it happens. Got a zucchini plant, um, several cucumber plants. I think that maybe covers those. What else? We put in some lettuce, carrots, and that's something else. I and maybe I shouldn't be like every other YouTuber, just begging for comments. You don't want to comment, don't comment. Um, but it's kind of curiosity to me. It's easy to plant, say, corn. We planted some sweet corn in the garden. I'm looking forward to eating it. I love corn on the cob. But the sweet corn, as you know, the corn kernel is a decent size. You can wrap your fingers around it. Pretty easy peasy to plant. But when you go to lettuce or carrots, the seeds are so tiny. I guess what I would ask if somebody knew is, how do you plant them silly things? You get 5 million of them in a packet, it feels like. And then they'll tell you, to space them a certain distance apart. It's like, how? I can't even hardly pick up those teeny tiny little seeds to spread out. So you end up kind of sprinkling some of them in the row and having, using up way too many seeds than what you need. So we got some of that, some lettuce. We put in some beets, just regular red table beets. Love them things too. They're very good fresh. And a lot of these things in the past, I have memories of growing up at home of canning all these things, or freezing them, somehow putting them up for winter. My mom did a lot of that. She was a very practical woman, had many mouths to feed, and many of us kids got in on the action in terms of helping her, store this stuff over the winter. And it's kind of a dying art, in terms of how to can or freeze food and put it up for the winter. We're all so in tune with just going to the store and going and getting what we need, and forgetting how all that's done. And I think truthfully it's cheaper to go get it at the store, but you never know what kind of product you're particularly going to get. Maybe it was raised with some chemicals that you prefer not to eat in your food, some of those kinds of things. And so, whereas if you raise it in your garden, you know exactly what you put on it and what you didn't. So, we did a lot of that growing up. Uh, but my wife, with some of her health and whatnot, and the time that it would take, we just don't put much up for winter anymore. Although we do have kind of a canning cellar, if you will. There's some items in there, but not a huge amount. So yeah, I think I mentioned the carrots, and oh yeah, that makes me think of a memory too. Both my wife and I, we grew up large families. We grew up with gardens. That was just something you did in the summer, to have fresh vegetables on hand for the family to eat. That's just one of the things you do when you live in the country. And and so we grew up doing this, and maybe it's that as much as anything the reason why we continue it. Can't say our boys have always been the best help, or our girls for that matter, in maintaining it. It's kind of like that Chicken Little story. Or is it Chicken Little? No, it's a Little Red Hen. I don't know if that's a fable or what it is, but nobody wants to help the red hen plant the grain in the ground. Nobody wants to help water it. Nobody wants to help weed it. Uh, Nobody wants to help harvest it. Nobody wants to help store it. Nobody wants to help turn it into flour. All these things, nobody wants to help make food. But all of a sudden, when the red hen finally gets to enjoy the fruit of her labor and has a fine loaf of bread, everybody comes out of the woodwork and they want to eat. But nobody wanted to do the work along the way. Well, that's kind of a terminal issue we have with our little garden, is making sure it's properly taken care of over the summer. And a lot of times it ends up being mom and dad out there on our hands and knees pulling weeds and giving it some TLC. But that's all right. It's our garden. Who knows what our kids will do one day in the future, whether they will plant gardens also. But frankly, I appreciate having it there. It's good therapy sometimes, and things at work don't go maybe the way you'd like, to go out and pull a few weeds and just think a little bit. But I was thinking of a memory, even like with carrots. This is something, I should have known better as a kid. It just didn't dawn on me until I was an adult. But in the garden we had at home, there was always a big old long row of carrots planted, actually a couple rows. And if anybody's ever planted carrots, there can be quite a lot. We just talked about the size of the seeds. They're pretty teeny, and you can put a whole lot of them in there. Well, what I could never figure out as a kid is how come the carrots in our garden were so small. They were just tiny. And they never got real nice and big like, the ones we could get at the grocery store, which were just huge. Those could be 8 inches to a foot long, in the store, whereas the ones that we were producing in our garden were just short little things. Some of them only like an inch or two. Well, the joke was on me. I think mom and dad had us plant that row, because we kids would be sent out there with a hoe in the garden in the summer and told to go weed it and what have you, which we, of course, like our kids, just love to do, of course. Well, while you're out there, if you're a hungry boy, what are you going to be doing? We were snitching out of the carrot row. Odds are if we got hungry, we pulled up a carrot, cleaned it off, and we ate it on the spot. I think occasionally we would do that with a radish, maybe a green bean from time to time, but most of the time it was a carrot. We didn't let the stinking things grow, so they always were tiny when we pulled them, and none of them ever fully matured, to become larger. Well, I didn't learn this lesson, which is just dumb, until, I was an adult and we had our own garden, and all of a sudden we were making these huge carrots. And I'm like, what in the world? It is possible in this dirt to grow large carrots. And it was all because they were getting eaten before they could mature. I seem to recall some wink wink odd going on with my parents growing up. They would mention this rabbit trouble that they had out in the garden. Well, I think they were talking about their kids. We were out there eating stuff before it would become harvestable. So, joke's on us, I guess. So, glad to have a garden then, glad to have it now. You know what? I look at the clock in here. I think I'm over 30 minutes already. So, I'm going to call the episode here. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. Hopefully I'm not boring anybody. We're just packing in a few bales on Gelvin Valley and reminiscing over my Blarney and the whole process. Take care until next time, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.